Welcome to the 5 Acres Podcast, the first in-house agency-produced program designed to provide inspiration, motivation, and concrete action steps for families struggling with issues related to adoption, residential care, and mental health. I'm Adam Hain, trainer of evidence-based practices here at 5 Acres, joined by Brandon Ito, the Associate Director of Development, and Jake Cashill, Director of Facilities. We're the team who are going to introduce you to the wonderful and talented clinicians, residential treatment counselors, therapeutic behavioral specialists, case managers, adoption service specialists, and the many other staff members who work tirelessly to help our clients resolve issues involving mental health, foster care, adoption, and sometimes all three at the same time here at 5 Acres.
Maybe it'd be helpful if I just shared like my questions, my notes, so you can kind of see where I'm coming from.
Sure.
Sort of get where I'm coming from. So after listening to the conversation, because I wasn't there either, I took notes, and then I had some, there were some questions I had, just me, stuff that I've always been interested in. And I was like, what's about that? And then I tried to think like a person who might be listening to the podcast who has no experience with foster care, mental health, or anything, like what they might want to know more about or what they might be confused about. So I'll just go from the top. So I thought it was really interesting that the cottages had all these interesting names, and I was curious where the names maybe came from, if anybody knows that. I thought that was really interesting. And then I was thinking, in terms of how this fits into the other podcasts, 5 Acres was originally just a residential type of program. Scratching my head, right? So that was like a question. Then when it was talked about how there used to be group homes, I was curious about why group homes were discontinued and why we're now in this short term, the StRTP structure that we're in. And then with minors, there was a lot of talk about they come in through foster care, but I was curious if a minor can get help with residential if they're not in foster care, because I was thinking there might be somebody listening who is saying, well, there's a lot of extreme behaviors going on here and I'm really having trouble, but it's not like a DCFS type thing right now. Am I falling through the cracks, or what's going on with that? There was a lot of talk about AWOLing, which I think is very familiar to the residential experience, but again, somebody on the outside might say to themselves, what does that mean? Or why are they able to do that? Like physically, like how does that stuff work? And I know that there's like real specifics, and I don't know, I think that would be like really interesting. We talked a lot about trauma, but I thought it might be fun. And this was actually something I was going to bring up with you, Brandon and Jake, that we might have like a little spin-off of like a little trauma-informed podcast, because that, again, is something I think that we're all super familiar with, but I think people outside in the community might not be aware, and trauma might be a buzzword that takes them in different directions and stuff.
This is all clinical, Missy. Woohoo!
Oh, wait. No, I was thinking Jen can answer a lot of these questions. Wait, is it me and Jen answering all the questions when you're saying is it?
I mean,
I think it's a piggyback. We'll piggyback.
Mm-hmm. Guys, whoever has anything they want to talk about. I
have answers.
Trust. Yeah, Jake can do it.
There you go. Building trust, using humor. I thought Oscar was like so fantastic.
It was really illuminating.
Yeah, that was like really. I feel like every podcast that we've done, there's been a moment that's just been very emotional, very real. And he got like super real and super like emotional and talking
personal
about
too.
Yeah, talking about boundaries and everything.
Personal.
I just thought, I just wanted to give him like a shout out. And then also how smart he is using humor, just understanding that if something isn't working, you don't do it the same way. You try to go in through other doors. And it just sounded like that's what residential is all about, is that there's a team and everyone's trying all these different ways to reach the minor and build that relationship again and build that trust again. It just sounded really awesome. So then the themes I pulled from it, the conversation, were trust, team, safety, hope, and then how that's created through this new boundary. You know, it just seems like the boundaries in residential are so important and so specific. So that's just like where my brain's at. So, you know, now you know.
Okay.
You really broke it down there, Adam.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Excellent.
Anyway, hey, I can answer a couple of your questions, Adam.
Okay. Well, let me.
Well, should we start off by first introducing?
Oh yeah, maybe introductions.
Yeah,
Yes,
let's introduce first Melissa and Jennifer. Thank you for joining us in this Clubhouse discussion. Melissa and Jennifer, whoever wants to go first, can you please introduce yourself and kind of your role with 5 Acres?
Sure, I'll start. My name is Jennifer Woolery. I've been with 5 Acres coming on 16 years. I am the program manager, StRTP residential division. I mostly handle the DCFS component, but I do step over to DMH since my supervisees bill. To put it in a nutshell, what we do, obviously we oversee program. I also supervise Salida StRTP. So that's another, that's our 6th bed. What we do on main campus though, primarily is we focus on, what I do is licensing out of home care. I also focus on client and staff overall care and making sure the program for treatment is running daily and how it looks and how we can modify it to even be better or to maintain what we're doing. Because we always want to strive to do better.
Of course.
Nice. What was that middle part?
Which one? Strive to do better?
No, I'm kidding. No. I can't remember what movie that's from. It's like somebody
It's called Wanda.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Wait, what was that middle part?
What was the middle?
It always gets tricky when you ask what we do because program manager kind of seems like it rolls out itself like, oh, that's obvious. But there's so much more that it entails that the day in and day out.
That's what you're here for.
Huh?
Yeah, that's what we'll get into.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you really do. I know you like to decorate your office like Pier 1 Imports, but
Flash Pottery Barn, but sure.
All right, Missy.
All right. I am Melissa Sprague, but I go by Missy. Most people know me as Missy Sprague. I am a program manager in the StRTP residential 5 Acres, and I have been with the agency for 13 years. And my role is mostly focused on the DMH side, so Department of Mental Health, all of our service providers. So the quality of services, quantity of services we are providing to each client is obviously individualized to what they need. And I oversee our clinical team and our rehabilitation specialist team and parent partners, and really focus on ensuring that the services are tailored to fit the needs of the clients and families we serve.
Cool.
Just quick, DMH is Department of
Mental Health.
Okay,
Yes.
That's what I thought. Okay, just clarifying.
And then you know what DCFS, Department of Child Family Services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then there's a CCL that comes nosing around sometimes too.
That's the added thing to my thing, the community care licensing and out-of-home care. That's the not so fun part, but the protective layer I get to deal with.
Yeah, they were, Claudia and Tiffany were giving them a virtual tour yesterday. We won't get into it, but
yeah.
I have a quick question right off the bat. Our main focus was residential, and Jennifer, you mentioned Salida. What's the main difference between Salida and residential, and how their programs differ?
Differ to begin with is the census. There are 6. And they're more like that. I kind of always look at Salida as like the transitional, like they've made progress and yet a residential setting. So they get to go, and age also reflects that. But it's more looking to independent living skills. Not that we don't do that in residential, but you're primarily trying to get them into the banking, trying to get them to jobs, a little more independence that they're allowed to. More, I don't want to use the word freedom because it makes it seem like they're locked up, which they're not in residential, but there's a little more privileges that they can earn.
yeah, they're high school boys.
Yeah, high school.
Yeah,
So it's a lot more independency. It's still focused on the same kind of treatment. That doesn't change as far as a rehab, clinician, child family team meetings. There's just a difference in the age and a little more privileges. It's almost like a step up per se.
And it's only males, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And only 6 is the census.
Okay.
I have a question, and maybe it can be tied to K and J. It's for Lil Wool, Jennifer, as we call her. So
that now.
Tell us, if you would, what, and I hear this term all the time, mostly prefaced by your out of program. What's the program? What day one, K and J come in. What, it sounds almost suspicious, like some sort of, we're going to put you in the program.
Yeah,
and
it's like,
right. But it's not. I know it's meant to. So what is it? How would you describe it to, say, me, a parent of one of the kids who might be coming in here?
When a client gets on, and that's our standard. There's always program, and once a buzzword happens, you're going to hear it across residential all the time. Ours is program. You're out of program. That is correct. How I'd explain it is, in essence, it's when a child enters on intake, there's and they go to the UPC, which, and I didn't specify who I supervised before. I have all the unit program coordinators, and they supervise each unit, which Adam asked earlier. Each unit is named something, and we'll get into that later. But nonetheless, when they come into intake, they get guidelines of questions, expectations. This is what we can, this is what we cannot do. Once they reach the cottage, each cottage universally has their own expectations, running program, what it looks like, start in the morning, midday to evening. So when they're at a program, in essence, that's when you work on tailoring individualized treatment. How can I make this child successful in the program they need to run to strive towards permanency? How can I modify their environment to when they transition out of the residential setting? So when you hear that, I don't want to say it's loosely, but you're out of program because you're not following the routine of the cottage, the structure of the cottage. And that's basically, if that makes sense. Missy might be able to piggyback on. But so when you hear you're out of program, you're not following what you're supposed to do. But normally we want to collectively consequence the same, which that was the hardest part of residential, is pulling that piece away. You can't do that. Every program is individualized and has to be tailored differently to meet the needs of the client.
Wow. So there's,
Does that make sense? So it's easy to say you're out of program. Oh, go ahead.
Each kid in Dove, a girls' cottage, could we'll call, there's the core program, but then there's little bedazzles to it, little elements. And
there has to be for that, because cognitively, developmentally, each kid is different. So I can't say little Johnny, the understanding of that may be different. I have to vary and tailor programs that way. The treatment teams, who I give credit, and this is probably, I don't want to say the downfall of Missy and I's position, but we know the cases, like we understand, but we don't get the ins and outs like the UPC does, the clinician, those moments that they can see progress, the moments where they say, the shining moment, because you're not going to reach all these kids by far at all, but they're going to have a takeaway. They're going to have a food for thought. And if you're part of that as a treatment team, at times it's disheartening, but then it could be illuminating. Like you said earlier, like, oh man, he is making progress. He can be successful, or she can do it. So with that being said, they have their core things. So when you have your cottage structure, as you're saying, you're primarily, yes, they're going to run it that way, but individually, they have to do it for themselves at where they're at clinically per se. Correct, Missy?
Yeah, because just to give you guys a little example, if one cottage is at the pool, it's pool time right now for the next hour. We've got all the kids in the pool, and this is our activity. We're working on social skills, we're working on communication skills, all of those things during this activity. But you have a client who has trauma surrounding a pool. Say they have a sexual abuse history involving water or an actual pool, right? That client will have a different treatment plan than the other clients. And we will tailor the activities to fit their needs so that they aren't re-traumatized, right? That may be something that, the clinician perhaps may start slowly doing sessions down near the pool to sort of work through that trauma history. But every client is going to have a different program. if you will, even though, does that make sense?
But if you don't know that, imagine how detrimental that we consequence a child for not going to the pool as a group activity, not knowing that piece. That's so detrimental and re-traumatizing trauma.
Right.
That's an essential piece to their program.
Yeah.
It's a program.
Yeah.
You know, that makes me think that no kids here ever had any trauma that's tied to being on the roof. They seem to love to be. There's no fear of heights with any of these kids.
It's true.
We've made good strides. We've made good strides with that.
Yeah.
So then these programs, they're not set in stone or brick. in your kids. Are they forever changing because they're making progress day to day, week to week, whatever? So these programs are constantly changing then?
Yeah, and what I will say is the clients all have a child and family treatment meeting every 30 days. So every 30 days at that point, we're really evaluating the client treatment plan, which is really the goals. What is the client working on? How are they progressing? Have they shown an improvement in something? Or do we need to change the frequencies on our services, on what we're doing, increase our rehab services, increase our clinical services, or decrease certain things? So everything is constantly being reevaluated every 30 days, but it doesn't have to wait that long. If we notice a significant change happen, we can update the client treatment plan, which is tied to the client's program in essence. And we can do that at any time. So it's under constant evaluation.
But another tracking component for that is through the DMH notes, that the progress notes that the staff do, because it gives you a good picture of the beginning, a middle, and an end of how the client is progressing. So if you're not getting to the middle, maybe we didn't target the underlying need. Maybe we didn't target the right behavioral need. So it's constantly being assessed.
How would, say, for example, I know this happens in the cottages. One of the kids wets the bed at night, and say they stop. Cottage staff may notice that. They tell the UPC, who tells the clinician, or
so there. So sorry, Jake. One of the elements that we focus on is teaming. It's called teaming, which is very, very important in our StRTP. And teaming is essentially the work of the treatment team, collaborating and communicating, which is essential, especially when we're looking at a short-term placement for a client. We need to make sure that our teams are constantly being on the same page and updated of the progress. That's a huge, like the example you gave, that's huge progress, which potentially was probably listed as one of the client's treatment goals, is to eliminate the enuresis or encopresis, whatever they're demonstrating. And if they meet a treatment goal, the clinician will alter the treatment plan for that. And the UPC, the unit program coordinators, and the clinicians are talking daily. But if you have a staff notice that, they would either tell the clinician when the clinician is down there, they could tell the unit program coordinator, a rehab might notice that, a rehab specialist, and they communicate that out. Again, that's one of the reasons why we have our CFT meetings, our child and family treatment team meetings every 30 days. But like I said, there's so much that can change in 30 days that, will impact the client's treatment. So something like that is communicated daily. And that's a huge success for our client.
Yeah, so the staff in the cottage, they know, hey, or they know this is important, so I got to tell somebody, this kid's no longer writing bad words on the wall, or there's progress, which would eventually be seen, maybe 2 or 3 days later if a clinician's in between visits or sessions. Would you say most of them would proactively report that to someone who, are they not so much required, but they're invested enough to be like, hey, this person's doing good. I want to tell clinician, even though she's not set to meet with this kid for another 4 days.
Usually through that treatment plan, Jake, the staff, everybody has a role in the treatment plan and the treatment team, everybody. With the staff, I hate to say it's their job to carry it out, but it is, because they're mostly with that client more than a clinician would be, more than a rehab would be. So they are, let's say, go back to the bedwetting. That staff would probably, it would be set in their, the client's treatment plan to wake up the child 2 times during the night to go to the bathroom. The child complies, the child could be incentivized by doing that. So it's increased behavior. Oh yeah, and then the staff will report back to say, hey, client, and it's logged in an overnight log, and the staff report back to the clinician or to the UPC, and it'd be documented in their own client log daily. It's an AM and PM client log, and client was woken up 2 times in the overnight log to go to the bathroom, successfully went to the bathroom, day 1 of non-bedwetting, and that will get reported to the clinician. So the staff plays a vital role in the everyday treatment of a client. And I can't emphasize that enough. The treatment does all the processing and the notes and all that, but it really has to be carried out by the staff, the RTC.
Yeah, and in my experience, I was a clinician about a decade ago when I started at 5 Acres. And I know every time I would go, you're down in the cottage every day. There's not a day that I wasn't down there, but the staff they're an excellent resource of information. They're seeing everything, they're hearing everything, and they're proud to report those successes to the clinicians because they know that that's somewhere being documented as a success. So even now, as administrators, when we see the clients and the staff, like, they're very quick to share the positive things going on with the kids and their accomplishments.
Makes sense. I mean, you got a team, and everybody on the team is like coming in from a different angle, because you got to like try all these different angles to try to reach and build the bridges and start getting that trust generated again.
And you kind of heard some buzzwords already about the integrated core practice model, tracking, collaboration. Those are key component, long-term, short-term goals. That's really where that's the big key component in the StRTP model.
Well, speaking about the StRTP model, after listening to the conversation, one of my questions was, there used to be group homes, and now they're not, or I guess the group homes were not short-term, because now everything is short-term. So how are things different, and why did they make those changes? I'm curious if there are answers to that.
Yeah, so StRTP was definitely a process. We converted.
Jennifer, you're trying not to like go, StRTP.
Well, I started residential-based services, which derived from.
Sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't not react to Jennifer's.
During my job.
It's been a process. It's been a process, but it's essentially, the concept behind why it transitioned, residentials and group homes transitioned into short-term placements, residential placements, is because we don't want clients to be housed in these centers for long. But, before it transitioned into an StRTP, we've seen clients at 5 Acres for years, 5 years, 6 years.
Wow.
And that's a long time for clients to be in a placement and outside of a home setting, which is really detrimental to them. Treatment obviously is a positive thing, but when you're a little kid growing up in an institution instead of a home setting without family or some sort of permanency, that's really a sad thing that we don't want to see. And that was a decision that was made by the state to transition us into short-term placements in the hopes that clients won't be with us for longer than 6 months. We still do see them stay longer than 6 months, but not, we do see some leave shorter than 6 months or by that benchmark. But that really is the hope, is to get them into what we would call a lower level of care, but it's really getting them out of an institutional environment and into a home, which is better for them.
And I think that's a key phrase when you use power and numbers. Before in residential, you didn't have a treatment team. You were level 12, and you had your staff and you had your on-duty supervisors. You didn't have a parent partner. You didn't have case manager. You weren't equipped with that when you came in. So now when you look at StRTP, you have that as soon as intake comes. That's what you have. So it's each cottage, I always say, is a mini wraparound process. And within that power and numbers, there's more connections. There's more attempts to get natural, informal supports. And I don't want to say it's more of a push, but it's more of an advantage to the client to have so many people on their side, and in hopes to find permanency, a special friend, a coach, a minister, whatever it may be, that can connect them to something. So I think that's the difference between the group home philosophy to now the StRTP ideology.
Okay. So with group homes, they were, like, in theory, still supposed to be somewhat temporary, but it didn't happen that way. It was just, for whatever reason, the bureaucracy, or who knows, it was just, they just stayed in the group home. Whereas now it sounds very intentional, very concentrated. Let's move them. Let's try to find that permanency. Let's make that, like, in the forefront of what's going on.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. That sounds
But
good.
the sad part is with that is there's still not a lot of homes, which is
right.
Which is sad. I'm just going to put it out there. It's the truth. But it's the work behind it that I really attribute to that. And like I said, reaching out to others, and whether it be like I said, special friend. That's what I feel is the difference. Jake has a question.
It's a real question. I've been here 6 years, and StRTP is what, 2.5 years old?
Yeah.
3. Before StRTP, it wasn't like you guys or the agency was not looking hard for permanency.
Right.
I mean, that was the goal, and it has been. So there was a reason a kid would be here from 6 years old to 14. It's not like you weren't trying to find him or her something. So do you feel there is a pressure, so to speak, to get them placed, even though they might be a little better off hanging here for a while? You know what I mean? A bad placement will be worse than staying here in a nice, protected, cared for environment. You ever run into that? Like, yeah, you know, we could give them the uncle tomorrow, but in reality, they'd be safer and better here. There's going to be that conflict.
Yeah. I wouldn't say pressure. I would say a drive to make sure it's their time to go. Like they're ready to go. So that's the drive to do it, but not pressure to do it. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah.
It's not ultimate pressure on our back. Like, oh, we got to push them out at 6 months more. Because like Missy stated earlier, we do have kids that stay longer than 6 months. But it's knowing at the end, when you put all this work into know, you know what, it was ready. It was his time, and what supports that, what I went earlier, is the documentation, the strives on making progress. I wouldn't lie if say like you want to see it successful, because everyone wants to say, oh, there's low percentages in making that happen. But you know what, you still embed something with them, and it's all about timing. And I couldn't say it any different. And Missy, you might be able to, but that's my feeling. Not so much pressure. It's the drive to do it and make it the right fit when the timing is right.
Yeah, it's definitely a collaborative process with DCFS, though, because they ultimately are in charge of discharging the client and where they're going. I mean, they predominantly are the ones locating foster home placements or, approving relative placements for our clients to go. And we have had situations where we've had clients at 5 Acres that are ready to go, but there aren't homes. Or they're waiting to go with grandma, but her home still hasn't been approved as okay by Department of Child and Family Services. So it's a collaborative process. I would say we've seen both. To answer Jake's question, we've seen kids ready to go that don't have a home. And then we've also seen kids discharge a little bit too soon that we're like, oh, I wish we had another month to make sure we could do some more family therapy with that family. But it all goes back to our collaborative work with DCFS.
Because everybody's version of ready is different. It's true.
Yeah. So on the 5 Acre side, you have the say of, okay, this client is ready to be placed. They've met all their programs. And then on the other side, it's more like DCFS, they find the home and then they collaborate with you, right?
And if they're
generally,
going with, generally.
Yeah.
So you're not so much going out finding placement per se, right?
We certainly can. I mean, this all goes back to our work with the client. If we're able to, if the client is like, you know what, I really want to go with my aunt in Texas, and the social worker hasn't even looked into that, that's our advocacy with DCFS. Like, hey, this is what the client is asking. Can we look into this? Can you contact them? Can you check out their home? Can you see if they're even interested in taking this kiddo? But so it definitely goes back to that. And then 5 Acres has foster care and intensive home services, intensive treatment foster care. So if we're able to collaborate internally and find one of our own homes to take this client, we can move that way as well. It's just, I will, go back to what Jen was saying. It's the very limited foster homes. So we need more foster for our clients.
And it sounds like that's been a problem for a long time, right? Like, historically, because I imagine even when 5 Acres was like the group home model, we're still, hey, we want to find permanency, we want to find a home for them. It's just those other systems, dealing with all those other systems. It just sounds like it's impressive to hear people dealing with all those systems.
But to piggyback really quick on what Missy said about placement, that's a pivotal role to the parent partner as well. Meeting with the parent, meeting with the aunt, and doing a family tree, asking like, who are your connections in your family, to help them link to maybe another home that they can go to. So that's a key role for parent partner as well in placement. So we do have a say, like, to try to help out initially in placing a client.
So a parent partner is somebody who gets into the process immediately? Is that something they're on the journey from like day one once the client comes into residential?
So that is actually part of the clinical assessment. So the clinical assessment, which is due very, very quick in the StRTP. So by day 5 of being admitted, they have a full assessment and treatment plan in place. And the parent partner referral is generated by the clinician. So when the clinician is evaluating the family system and who we have involved and approved by DCFS, they will do a referral for a parent partner to be assigned if it's appropriate for the case. And then one is assigned immediately.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow.
How many parent partners do we have?
What?
We have 2.
2, right.
2 now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Both named Martha?
One Martha and one Demetrius.
Yeah. Oh, Demetrius, that's right. Yeah.
Hey, how do you forget about Demetrius?
I haven't seen her since almost a year.
Almost a year. Yeah. I know.
So I had another question about who can get residential help. On the interview or the conversation that I was able to listen to, there was a lot of talk about foster care and the foster care system. And I was just curious, is that the only way someone can get help through residential, through being in foster care or having that sort of DCFS involvement? Or are there other ways someone could potentially get help with the residential system?
So we have primarily 3 what we would call funding streams that are the referrals, right? So most of our referrals come through DCFS when the clients are detained and then they need residential placement. And then the second one that we have is the adoption. So DCFS post-adopts clients, our second one. We don't see a lot of those as much as we used to years ago. But DCFS post-adopts, it's a component of DCFS, and those are families that have adopted a client already, but they're struggling in whatever capacity, either it's the client's severe behaviors that are warranting placement out of the home or whatever's going on, and then they may seek out placement, even though they're not a DCFS client anymore. They are officially their adoptive child. They will be placed at 5 Acres. And then we also have our Kaiser clients that are coming in for placement through the Kaiser system that are generally very short term.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's good to know.
Well, I'm done. Okay, see you guys.
That's it, Rob.
Can you quickly explain the Kaiser? Because I hear that being tossed around a lot in residential in our programs. Can you just kind of elaborate a little more the Kaiser part of it?
That is the guru right there.
Yeah, well,
I've got to be honest.
We are very happy that we have a contract with Kaiser now for residential. So essentially families that have Kaiser insurance will go through their mental health services they often starts with a psychiatrist, seeing the psychiatrist and a therapist through Kaiser. And if it's determined that the behaviors or the trauma, whatever, again, similar to posted ups, whatever's going on specifically with them warrants a residential environment, Kaiser will authorize the client to be placed at our StRTP for whatever duration of time. Like I said, it tends to be short term, but it's looked at every week. So we've had some Kaiser clients that have stayed for 2 months, some a month. I want to say, I think our longest maybe was 3 to 4 months, perhaps. And that's just evaluated. We work with the Kaiser team over there, their psychiatrists and their case managers. Wow. And our clinician collaborates with them just to determine how long they'll stay. But it's the same, we offer the same services. So they'll receive individual family therapy, rehab services, group therapy, all of that.
It's just the way they're referred is a little bit different.
Yeah, referred in the funding stream, yeah.
Funding, gotcha. Oh, okay.
Well,
what else?
Well, I just wanted, maybe I'll do my shout out. I just wanted to give a shout out to Oscar. Having the privilege of listening to that conversation and listening to Oscar talk about what he does and where he comes from. And it was just very powerful. And I really appreciated what he said about boundaries. And it just made me think that I think it was already brought up in this conversation, just how the boundaries are so important. I mean, they're living here and they have people that they're with, like, who are sort of in a parental role, but it's different. And you just have to be very, I think, clear about your role and focusing on safety and staying focused, and then also building that relationship. And it just sounded really intense. And I mean, it's just like, I was really blown away by how he's able to navigate it and stay on his game. I thought that was really cool.
And to piggyback on what Oscar said, it's absolutely knowing your client, knowing when you can use humor, knowing when you can use distractibility. It's the limits you have and the relationships you have. And primarily to have all that, the buy-in for the client is their safety, to know I'm safe where I'm at. I'm willing to share because I'm safe. I can go to a trusted individual because I'm safe. But when he talks about that, that is like, I get the chills, really, just got the chills, because I did that role before crisis, undue supervisor. And it's, you have the best conversations with them at the time of the trauma, the de-escalation phase, the point of crisis. There's so many loopholes you go with them. And the best part of that is the debriefing after the fact, after the crisis. And that is where connections are made. That's where trust is made. And that's where the client's gonna listen to you when you come. You listen to me at my worst. You're there for me at my worst. You listen to me at my best. And you're listening to me when I would just want to horse around with you. And that is building the relationship. And I tell my staff all the time about that. Missy tells her clinicians that is the key. And I don't want to use the word buy-in, but it is a service we provide. So it's the buy-in for the client. But once you make that connection, it's detrimental and crucial, and it can work wonders to avoid so much more as far as like allegations or anything they might say.
Yeah.
It's crucial, just having that. And some people can come in and just be like, hey, and the kid will just de-escalate. And some it may take others. You have to use planned ignoring because they'll feed off that. So there's various techniques.
Nice.
Huh?
Oh yeah.
Planned ignoring. I like that.
I know it sounds terrible, but it really is useful.
I'm going to try that with a couple of my coworkers here.
Missy can't use it.
Ignore them.
Missy can't use it with me. We talk too much during the day.
Yeah, but the boundaries, I mean, that is a really important component to note with our work, because when you are working in a facility that is operating 24/7, and this is their kid, like this is their home right now, the clients, this is their home right now, it's very imperative to keep our professional boundaries and to be mindful always. I always talk on just being keeping the trauma focus on, because our clients, you get to know them and you're seeing them and you play basketball and you're eating dinner with them and you're doing all these things, and you can easily forget that this client was just detained from this horrific abuse. And so when I'm casually putting my arm, just like, hey, just good job on this basketball game, like you just did awesome, I have to be really mindful that could trigger him, because he has trauma and does not want to be touched like that, but that's why we work as a team and constantly remind one another of their trauma and to be careful. One touch can set somebody off. And even if you have a good relationship, if they're particularly already triggered that day for whatever reason, they just had a really bad phone call with their mom that set off all these bad memories of things that happened. And, someone I do have a good relationship with, I just high-fived and it just, set that kid off. So it's every day things are changing. I think Jen and I talk about this all the time. We've worked together for over a decade. That's our favorite thing about residential working here, is just every day is different. Every day is different. Something is always going on every day. So.
And for the clients, we always say, for the new RTC and even to the old RTCs, our vets, always ask permission.
Yes.
Can I have a side hug? Can I high five you?
Yes.
Do we forget sometimes? Absolutely. I've forgotten, where I was like,
yeah,
I just did it. But I always say practice what I preach, and I try to instill that. But do I make mistakes? Sure, we're human. But the big thing is staff and client care, and I can't emphasize that enough.
Along those lines, I'm going to just ignore you. Along those lines, there's a certain client here. I'll just say that he likes all things police and sheriff.
Yes, yes.
I remember him right outside my office, day one, day two, biting his arm. I don't want to be here. And I raised my hand too quickly to scratch my head. He was like, whoa, whoa, yeah. Freaked him out. Now we're side huggers. And so that whatever you're doing with him is working. I'm sure he's an interesting little kid, but he's better than he was.
Yeah.
He's such a funny guy.
And that's the rewards Missy and I get to see. We don't have our feet in it, but when we watch it from afar, that's the rewards I like. Kudos to that team and the hard work they put in.
Yeah.
So that would be that's when I sit back and go wow. Just sometimes I'll just watch him pass out his tickets to staff because they're walking too fast. And I just
oh yeah.
And I sit back and I enjoy it instead of
so funny.
They let him act out, and it's all about role playing and acting out and being who you want to be. And it's fun to watch.
Yes. How many handcuffs do you think he's gone through? Every week he loses 4 or 5 handcuffs, and then he gets his what do you call it? Allowance, buys more of them, and then they just disappear.
I think with this holster now, he's got them pretty secure. It's getting a little better.
A little bit, but it was
a little bit.
Yeah, every day he's like, "Can I have handcuffs?" I'm like, I bought him 10 of them, little plastic ones, and they're I don't know where they are.
Yeah, but he has come a long way.
Yeah,
a long way.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
it's so funny.
Yeah.
I said those are the and don't we see sad moments, but that's the joy you just capture and say, okay, he was difficult, very difficult to work with, but look at the progress. Look at the progress that was made, and those are the aha moments. Yeah. And it keeps you going, because there's, like I said earlier, there's disheartening moments where the team has put so much work into something on a permanency and something's fallen through and the team just gets deflated. I mean, can you imagine 6 months putting into something and that might be a permanency placement and it falls through for whatever reason and the team just goes, oh. But they got to tell the kid, come on, we're going to keep going. And that's hard. That's a hard position to be put in. We stumped you guys, didn't we?
No,
You know, you guys are just.
remember an hour ago you were like, "What are we gonna say?" And now you just went. "Arr."
I know.
That is a testament to our skills as interviewers. And,
No, I think it is. You guys, you get the right questions.
They didn't choose just anybody. Come on.
Hey, are there trends in age? Like, did there used to be, like with group homes, did it tend to be a certain age and now it's like a different age? Or is it just sort of life and whatever age life brings?
You mean each group home? I miss you. Each group home has.
I mean, oh no, sorry, I wasn't being clear. I meant just in terms of like the clients who tend to be coming in, tend to be getting referred.
It actually kind of goes in waves. We
really?
might see it. Yeah, it's more like we'll see like a 6 months where we're getting all referrals for 14-year-old girls, and we run out of capacity to provide that. And then you'll see, like, we went through a wave where we were seeing a lot of 13, 14-year-olds, and then we started getting some younger ones. So it really goes in waves.
So interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
I think it's mostly tied to the moon, the phase of the moon.
Oh,
well, I mean, isn't everything?
No.
And the interesting is we don't have an answer for that.
The tides and
right.
the kinds of kids we get here.
Well, I had that question too about the names of the cottages. Just they all have like really interesting names. Is there a history to the names, or was there like have they been named that way for a long time, or I don't know. I'm into names. Doves, like what's that?
Since I've been there, it's always been the same names.
Oh, okay.
I don't know the history behind it, although they're birds. One side's birds and one
birds and trees. Yeah,
birds and trees. One side's birds, one's trees.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure Jake's got a great story he could tell to make something up, but I don't know real folklore about
totally
it.
Works for me.
No, I do remember I was in the heritage room and I pulled out this drawer, and there was something hidden in there. So I pulled, and it had the history of the names.
Oh, I love that.
Wow.
That's total BS. I could have gone on with that. Or it was,
I was
like intrigued. I was like, oh, I was ready to hear more.
Yes.
It's plausible though, because there is so much history with 5 acres that it wouldn't have surprised me at all that there would have been like a secret compartment.
It's got to be jotted down.
Yeah.
It's, it's probably hidden in the walls, and we'll find it when some kid punches through it. And some like amazing thing is going to come out on the history of 5 acres.
We'll be full of dust and hold the scroll.
Yes. In the beginning, there was darkness, and then
there was Sequoia Cottage.
Oh my goodness.
As for that, we just know it's birds and trees. I wish I had more to tell you.
That's okay. I got a lot out of it. Fictional or otherwise.
So now I'm going to start pounding on some walls.
I know.
Is there a tree called Kodiak? I don't think so. There's sequoia, yes, and there's Kodiak trees. So we got a bear in there.
Yeah,
either that or
Google
what's
search.
That? It's either.
It has to be. Although I've never heard of a Kodiak tree, but I feel like it has to be. Because it's on that side, right? It has to be. It has to be.
I don't know.
Unless they stop, they're like.
There are Kodiak trees.
There we go.
They're almost, I think, similar to like a spruce tree.
Like evergreen stuff?
Yeah.
Hence Spruce Cottage.
Yeah. So it makes sense then.
Yeah.
Kodiak. It's not about the chewing tobacco?
Mint flavor?
Mint flavor. Red man chew.
There's Kodiak Christmas trees.
There is?
There's Kodiak spruce Christmas trees. There's Kodiak.
Ooh, a mix.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's not just a bear.
It's a bear in a tree.
Yeah. Oh.
And your grandma's Kodiak.
Oh, I'm going to start spreading stories.
What is it? Dipping tobacco? Yeah, right?
Yeah.
No, this is great. Jake or Adam, did you have any more questions or?
No, I don't. Let me see.
Did you just spit on your wrist, Jennifer?
I had to clear my throat.
No.
I had a Kodiak leaf in my throat.
You don't want to swallow that stuff.
What about some takeaways? If for those listening, this podcast, if you can give them kind of 5 takeaways about, or they could be like shout outs too, about the residential program, the programs that you guys run, what would be something that you want the listeners to know?
As far as if you're working in the field or just in general?
Just in general.
Oh.
If I may?
Go for it, Jake.
No, I wasn't going to list off 5 things, but I was going to say, should the takeaways be tailored to someone who happened to go on a podcast and looked up residential treatment or foster care or something? Maybe someone looking for info on how they can get their kid here. Like, hey, here are 5. I think we were aiming towards something like this in the very beginning when we were doing this 5 takeaways. Here are 5 concrete steps that you can take if you find you're in a position where you have or know of a kid who's in a situation where maybe group home might be good, or I don't know. If you want to list off numbers, or what can someone who's seeking help do?
Before I answer that, I don't know why it's resonating in my brain what Adam said, or I don't know if it was Brandon. I think it was you, Brandon, about what I would want to say about a takeaway. And I think of staff, because I've been in the field for so long. The first thing I would want to say to them is, as stressful as it gets, there's always tomorrow. And then for someone outside looking in, maybe a parent, as hopeless it may feel, never give up. That resonates with me so strong. And that's what I would want to say. Like, it feels like, because when they come to us, we know their business. I mean, they're trusting us to know, we know their history, the parent, we know everything about them. That is a vulnerable place for someone to be in. And to have you go through that and expose your life to us in this treatment facility, more power to you to saying, I need help and I want my kid back. That's a hard thing. So kudos to somebody. So when somebody feels hopeless, never give up. And for the staff day in and day out that had a horrible day and you go home, I was a residential counselor. I started from the beginning. I know I walked the walk. So I know how it is. But I would be like, whew, that day was terrible. And sometimes like, why am I in this field? And it's the truth. I'm going to be honest. Like sometimes I go, why am I still in it? Because I'm meant to be, A, and B, because there was another tomorrow. And for one small, like minute second, I may have an impact on one of these child's lives.
That's always good.
That makes me, and I don't need to pat on the back or feel good, but watching others succeed, watching others strive, watching a kid go home, watching a parent get off drugs, it's so rewarding. That would be my in for all to say. And I hope it really resonated with me, and I wanted to get that part out.
Wow. Jennifer, you're a much nicer person than people say.
It's right?
So amazing. Yes.
I'm telling you, I'm a bad rap. Is it my position? Well,
okay.
Another good takeaway, I would say, our clients go through such severe traumatic experience in their lives, and they're so little. Some of them are so little, anywhere, 5 years old and 6-year-olds coming in, all the way into, the adolescents. We see their trauma history, or, that's what they see, those experiences that they go through. And then you have parents that are seeing these really severe, crazy, scary behaviors that come of it. And to tie in with kind of what Jen was saying, but they're always being, keeping hope, is that kids and people, human beings, are resilient. and we are constantly changing. We are constantly capable of growth and healing. When you seek the support and the treatment and the help and are able to receive it from people who genuinely care for you and want to see you heal from your trauma, from your past, from your experiences, you can achieve that. You can achieve healing. You can learn to get past the trauma and these horrible things that you've been through. It doesn't define you. It does not have to define you. It becomes something you can grow from, something you can gain strength from. And we try to remind our clients of these things, and our clinical work is just these things. You can get through it. You can be stronger from it. So if clients are feeling this way, kids out there are feeling, traumatized, like, will I ever be okay? Will I ever be normal? Will I be able to get past this? Yes, you can. Yes, you absolutely can. And to parents who are seeing these behaviors that are coming from it are like, oh my gosh, can I ever have my kid living with me when he's punching holes in walls and threatening me? Yes, you can. Let us work with you. Let us help you and get past this stuff together. It is possible, and you will come out stronger and wiser. And I always say kinder from hard experiences.
And it's not an easy road. If it did, we'd all be doing it. We'd all be perfect. Well, I am. No, I'm just kidding. It's not an easy road. There's going to be bumps, bruises, and that's what makes you change, and it makes you, it's your fight. That's all it is.
You know what they say, what doesn't kill you makes you bruised.
I have enough of those.
Is that the same? No, that's not the same. What doesn't kill you leaves you hobbled and scarred.
Scarred for the better.
Scarred. Sorry, I had to step away. I missed Missy's speech, but that sounded like exactly a takeaway that we were hoping for. Don't give up. Hope.
And the quote, Jennifer, that you just said, like, gave me chills when you said it.
No, I really get it. I'm passionate about what I do. And I've ran different programs. I've done different positions, but residential has been my key. And I get to see all that, and I've seen all that. And I always say, I can walk, when staff say this, that, and the other, and I can relate to them.
Yeah, that's helpful.
And that's the most important, I think, to them and to me and to Missy. But yeah, it is. It is. I'm not saying it's all sunshine and roses every day. I'd be lying to you if I said that. But I keep coming to work, and I keep wanting to give quality care.
Yeah.
Can I get a
That's another thing we tell our staff, our clinicians, our rehab specialists, and our staff is, we're planting seeds. You might not see this child bloom and be all, healed and back to normal. That you might not ever see that in your lifetime. A lot of times our staff don't see those things. But we have to believe that the work we're doing with them, you are planting seeds and you are helping them progress towards that. And the best part about our job, which happens every now and then, is when we have a client come back and show up at 5 Acres and say, like, you changed my life, my work with you. I was so mean to you at the time, and I'm sorry I gave you a hard time, but it saved my life. It saved my life. Like, that is why we do this work. That is why we stay in residential all these years. It's like the best experience. I've had it happen actually with 2 clients at 5 Acres that have come back, and I was totally crying, and just it's just so emotional, and it's amazing to see them, what they can do with their commitment to their own healing process.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You guys ready to join us in StRTP now?
I feel like I'm kind of part of it.
You are, Jake.
You definitely are. You are.
I remember a client, he discharged 40 years ago or something. He was in school at Hillside, I think? I don't know. I went to his graduation. But the whole point is, maybe a year, it was before the pandemic, a school bus goes by and his head pops out the window. Ah! So that was awesome. Of course, then he got hit by a passing truck. But before that, it was good.
This was great. Yeah, it wasn't too painful, right?
No.
once we got started. Yeah.
I hope we answered it as, you know, to your understanding. And if you need any clarity, Missy can help you out with that.
Hey, spread the word if you would amongst your staff. Say, hey, it's not a traumatizing thing, you know, because we may do more of these.
Okay.
We're hoping to, yeah.
Yeah, there's very little else I'd like to hear from you two. So there are other people who we'd
we're just
like
program managers.
I wanted, we should do like an undercover boss. And,
Want to?
that'd be funny. Dress up as like a new total green RTC. That'd be funny.
That would be.
And the part I listened to of the previous podcast was wonderful. It was about 15 to 20 minutes. And it was
they
nice
had
to
some
hear.
really great. Yeah.
People
Yeah,
are telling really, really good stories and sharing really fantastic experiences, and it's been awesome.
And it's almost like everybody touches on the same theme of safety, you know, support, boundaries. It's neat to hear that we're all speaking the same language.
Yeah, and coming from different angles too.
Yep.
So it's neat. Yeah. All right, well, thank you,
All right.
Jennifer and Missy. Sorry for the confusion
That's okay.
in the beginning,
No
but
worries.
yeah, it was great. And we appreciate you coming on and being a part of this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully we tackled the questions and you have a clearer picture of StRTP.